Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Corey Wren. I'm a vegan feminist, I'm a vegan sociologist, and I'm a vegan witch. And this is a sort of follow-up to a previous video I've done on beautiful Avebury. Stick around, let me explain to you why this is an amazing place for witches and why it's especially relevant for vegan witches. So I live in Canterbury, which is in southeast England, and it's a little bit too far, especially for me as a non-driver, to get to Glastonbury or to Stonehenge. But Avebury is just a couple of trains away and a bus ride to get to. It's 3.5 hours from Canterbury. But more importantly, it is an amazing henge in this tiny village out in the countryside, and I'd say only about 2,000 people show up to the solstice celebration each year. I think there's a lot of structural reasons for that. I think that the community works hard so it doesn't get too big, because at Stonehenge 25,000 people go every year, which is a bit chaotic. I've spoken more about why Avebury is such an amazing place in last year's video from when I visited, but this year I got the chance to explore a little bit more, and I wanted to share some of that footage with you. Because it's such a tiny village, it's very, very difficult to find accommodation there. Basically, in the 1930s, there was this rich archaeologist. He came from the Marmalade fortune, believe it or not, and he basically bought up most of Avebury and started to research the Stonehenge. And he started to modify the village because the henge is so big, a whole village sits inside of it, including a pub and a church or two. But he basically started to modify the village and started to demolish buildings that he didn't like. He was trying to reclaim the henge, restore a lot of the rocks, the actual stones that had been demolished or buried. But as a result of that, there's very few houses actually left in the village. There's a lot of resentment around that, by the way, because people are actually living there. They've been living there for generations, and then he just came in and just started buying them up and demolishing them. But nonetheless, there's very few houses left, and so we had the rare opportunity, my vegan witch friends and I, this year, to get a historic home inside of the henge. So that gave us the opportunity to actually do some exploring. Because if you don't have a car, and we did have a car, but because at solstice it's so busy, you really can't drive to any of the sites because they shut down all parking, any roadside parking, which is one of the ways to manage, keep there from being too many people. But unfortunately, when you come to visit, if you're not actually staying in the village, you basically can't go see anything else. It's very difficult. So we were fortunate enough, we got to stay at the old bakehouse, and then we did some hiking around the different sites. So we got to see, for instance, the West Long Barrow, which is, I think, the longest and certainly one of the oldest barrows in England, if not in Europe. And it's been partially restored, so you can actually go inside it, and it's a beautiful ritual space inside, and people go in there, meditate, leave offerings. It smells like incense. People were drumming when we were there, but you basically have to walk down Salisbury Hill in order to reach it. And Salisbury Hill, I didn't talk too much about that in my last video, I don't think, but it is, I think, one of the largest human-created mounds in Europe, and it's about as old as the pyramids, and it's about the same size as the pyramids. So it's like a European variant of what they have in Egypt, and it's really, really, really phenomenal, and it really dominates the landscape. It could have been a ceremonial space, could have been a fancy burial space, it could have been the embodiment of the goddess in the landscape. But it does dominate, and it is very, very stunning. So you walk past that, you can go to the barrow, and then on the other side of that, you can go down the avenue. There's a huge avenue lined with stones towards the main henge. There's several henges, incidentally, and historically there was a big house in the very center of it, the beginning of Avebury. Archaeologically, they've discovered that. And there's so many other things. And actually, I didn't get to see too much of it because it's in the middle of June. Usually it's so hot that I have to conserve my energy. So we did that, and we also were able to actually attend the full solstice celebration. It was usually we had to leave before that, but because we're staying in Avebury, we got to stay. They did not do any fire dancing this year because it has been so dry, but they did do some drumming, and it was truly transformative. As the drumming picked up around 10 p.m., as the sun's truly setting, the crescent moon, had risen straight up above the henge, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. Now, why does this matter as a vegan? Well, first off, if you're a vegan traveler, I can tell you this. There's a little henge shop that's at the entrance to the main part of the site, and they are always really well stocked on vegan stuff, like vegan ice cream, vegan cookies, vegan anything, vegan baked goods. So you really are set. And there's also the pub, the Red Lion pub, and they have some vegan stuff on their menu. Last year I went there and they had a food cart set up and they had vegan hot dogs. So if you're a vegan traveler, don't worry. There's plenty for you to eat. It's not a trouble at all. Now, if you're a vegan spiritual traveler, here's where it's important, I think. The more I learn about Avebury, the more I do have to have a sense of respect when I enter this space, because as a human, when I walk into the henge, especially as my heritage is Scot-Irish, so I know that this is kind of my white people legacy, right? So when I walk in there, I'm like, wow, my ancestors may have built that. You have that. It's like it's a human species thing. You're connected to this amazing lineage of what your ancestors will have done. That's amazing. But as a vegan, I'm also thinking about this henge, the building of this henge, the ceremonies that would have been conducted here throughout the centuries, the millennia, were powered on the mass slaughtering of non-human animals. And in many cases, they would have been marched to these sites to be slaughtered. So it's sort of like, I think, if you were to go to the Colosseum in Rome, it's hard to just go to the Colosseum and like, wow, what an amazing structure that was built, because you know it is a site of violence. You know that it is a space where people were brought in by the thousands to spectate and to feast on dead animals and to watch the killing of dead animals. Well, it's not much different from the henge, but I think that the henge gets so wrapped up in this like new age sort of romanticism that we lose sight of the fact that these are actually sites of extreme violence. So I think then as vegans, when we enter these spaces, we need to take a moment to honor that and maybe use it in a way to rejuvenate us and to think about how we might reclaim a heritage of human, non-human relationships before these systems of violence were introduced. Because Avebury is old, Stonehenge is old, but humans went on way before that, and we weren't always killing and dominating other animals. But I also think that when you walk in there now in the 21st century, there's a radical reclaiming happening there where people are now coming to new spiritual practices. They're getting jaded by capitalism and inequalities and all the violence in the world. And there's a reason why Avebury has to like bolster up, because there's increased interest in these sites, because there's an increased interest in imagining something new. So I think that's also very important as a vegan witch when you're entering this space. It's not just thinking about this horrible past, this horrible present, but thinking of the deep past of humans' history, where we live symbiotically with other animals, because we are animals. We're a social species, and we've always worked in camaraderie with other species, but also thinking future. This kind of vegan futurism, like what can we imagine moving forward? And that creative stuff is happening right now. So when you do visit these henges, you see that. This idea of a sort of performative, prefigural, community type space where peace and love dominate. It ain't all perfect, of course, because sometimes people are coming to the henge because they're just looking for a party. I know that we saw some nasty stuff go down. People were just getting like really drunk and probably on some nasty drugs or something, and the police had to intervene, and fist fights and stuff. And then I know at another henge at the Nine Ladies, someone was actually murdered this year during the solstice celebration. So unfortunately, that's just the way it goes when you try to create something that's more communal and more positive and full of love and peace. Some people are just there for the party, and some people can't handle it. They're still wrapped up in this culture of violence and patriarchy. Nonetheless, I think that as a vegan witch, it's an amazing place to go. It's an amazing place to sort of really use your imagination, a creative imagination for the future, and a reclaiming imagination for the past. If you've visited any of these henges, let me know. I've also got one for my winter solstice when I went to Mitchell's Fold, and that also has an interesting sort of vegan witchy heritage to it. But if you've gone to any of these, let me know. I'd love to know what your experiences were and how entering those spaces as a vegan was like for you. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video, please share the video, engage with it, comment on it, because that helps YouTube to figure out what to do with it, because as you can imagine, this is a very niche topic. But I'm really just here to try and democratize some of these ideas from my book, Vegan Witchcraft, and I'm hoping to bring some material reality to these sometimes very abstract ideas. So if you want to actually join me for some ritual work, for some spell work, be sure to join my Patreon. I do post some free content, and you're welcome to subscribe. Information will be below. Thanks very much for watching. Keep it witchy.